Hey everyone, welcome. Welcome to our last live Tend Her class. Can you believe it? It's almost basically done. It went by very quick. Wondering how all of you are doing. I am feeling very grateful to be here with all of you tonight talking about social resilience and connection, our interconnectivity, and gosh, how we impact each other on such a deep, deep level. I would also say tonight is about relationships. And I don't think any of us gets away without having some challenging relationship in our life, whether it's a coworker, a child, a parent, a partner. It just is, part of Earth School, I guess. So we're going to get into what do I do with that? How do I manage that? What's mine? What's not mine? Um, and yeah, hi, Bernie. Welcome tonight. Chat away in that box. I love to see all of you, your input and questions. And as always, we'll do content tonight from about 6 to 7. We'll sort of close down that portion. And then I will stay on for questions. And in fact, I'm going to grab those. I had a couple people email in with questions. And so I've got those here. Yeah, so make sure you put questions in that chat box. I have Sean here. That's okay. I think I can figure out how to. Okay. Oh, did you just get off? Okay. Okay. I think we got it all figured out. All right, everyone. Barbara, I feel a little sad that it's our last class too. I'm going to offer some options for how we can all keep connecting. So we'll get into that. So let's just dive in. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. Let's dive into all this deep, good content. As you all know, I was in Spain last week on a training that I felt very guided to go to. It was super intense. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. But I definitely feel like so much of what evolved for me in those 5 days is part of this whole resilience training, part of my own resilience training. And so I hope that some of my energy, some of what shifted in me internally will sort of come through tonight in all of this work. Okay. So actually, before we even get to this, I want to take a moment to remind all of us that it's a new moon. It's a new moon today. It's a new moon in Scorpio. So even if you're listening to this video a couple days later, new moons are powerful portals. So the sky is completely dark tonight. They're powerful portals into something new, hence the new moon, right? We have this opportunity to sort of plant something in the dark. And then we have this next moon cycle to watch it sort of come into, emerge into something new. So it feels very timely. And again, I always say so often the timing of my courses, I'm like, I can't make this stuff up. It feels so beautiful that we're ending this class on a new moon because it's a chance for us to sort of plant a seed about emerging differently. It's like that butterfly, that tend her butterfly. We've all sort of been in this chrysalis, things evolving, things shifting, our whole makeup morphing. And then we come out new, something different. That's what my trip to Spain very much felt like. I can't put it to words, but I feel different. Something shifted deep inside of me. And I'm hoping maybe you got a small taste of that in this program. So I do want to do, before we dive into the new content, I feel like it's really important just to do a little bit of review of where we've come from. I truly believe that the 3 steps to finding more inner resilience. So remember, we talked about in that very first class that on the path to creating more resilience, we're always going to find resistance. We're going to resist doing the tools. We're going to resist coming to class. We're going to resist meditating. We're going to resist reaching out for help. Resistance is always a sign that we're on the cusp of some big life, massive shift in internal change. Our ego does not like us to change, hence the resistance that seems to come up. So we talked about in that first class resistance, and that to really begin to find that steady, calm, stable inner core. Resilience is not about being a Pollyanna. Resilience is not about being stoic and never showing your feelings. Being truly, authentically resilient means that we know ourselves. We're committed to the process of getting to know ourselves. And this is a lifelong process. It doesn't end. And I was so humbled on my trip in Spain because I was definitely out of my wheelhouse. I was working with an energetic teacher that I knew very little about, this type of energy work she was tapping into. And so it was so humbling. Didn't matter how much I knew about other things. Like, I was so humbled, but that's such a beautiful process to go through. It's sort of like the idea, the more we know, the less we know, the more we can realize, I don't know anything. So the more we learn, it's like, I don't know anything. But this process of knowing thyself, it is a lifelong journey, and one I feel very committed to. And I believe it's what then allows us to be able to establish a stability in ourselves, to know ourselves and know that we're continually morphing and changing. Feel ourselves. We got to let the energy, the emotion roil through our systems. Emotion is such a beautiful guidance for us. We just have to be willing to feel it. And then we have to show ourselves. And I would say this last part, there's some discernment necessary with it. And really, the first 2 steps, I would say, are where the bulk majority of our time and efforts go. And then when we feel ready, that's the emerging butterfly, right? Now I'm going to show myself. I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to really let people see me. So these are sort of what we've talked about, at least in this course, as the 3 steps towards resilience. And then I gave you all kinds of tools. So here's kind of a reminder on one page of some of these tools. Dropping into our feet or our pelvis, talking to our heart. So remember last week, if you watched the video, one of the things I talked about is that our mind is not always the most reliable source for us, that our heart is a far better guidance system to us. And so when we can really tap into our heart and ask the heart questions, and my encouragement was always to start with my heart. Is it in my highest interest to fill in the blank, but always starting with my heart. I'm talking to you, my heart, my heart, my heart. What's best? We have worked with heart coherent breathing. We've worked with this 90-second rule, meaning emotion goes through very quickly, 90 seconds. Can you stay with it? We've worked with writing our own resilience story. Many of you brave souls signed up for a resilience circle. We've been doing hypnosis every Wednesday. You'll get your last hypnosis recording this Wednesday. And then that nonlinear movement. And I hope you all listened to the amazing podcast we recently did with Michaela Boehm, the creator of this nonlinear movement method. Maybe, Sean, you can get that in the chat box. So these are some of the tools. So I'd like to take, let's just take a couple minutes and drop in to one of these tools. We'll do the heart coherent breathing, and maybe we'll do a little feet pelvis and a little heart talk as well. So if you're in a place where you can take a moment to just drop in, I'm going to encourage you to do so. When I drop in, I almost universally find my hand landing on my heart. You could rub your heart. You could just let your hand rest on your heart. You could tap around your heart. but just that desire to begin to connect more consciously inward to the heart space. Before we start the heart coherent breathing, take a moment just to see if you can get your awareness down. So can you get your awareness down towards your feet or your pelvis? Can you pull your awareness down? And then keeping a portion of your awareness anchored in your feet or your pelvis, we're going to begin to breathe, breathing up through the soles of the feet from the earth, bringing that awareness and energy, that breath up into the heart. As you exhale, you let your heart just expand and soften. So 3 of these breaths, drawing earth energy up through the feet into the heart. As you exhale, the heart expanding and softening. It's opening with every exhale. 3rd, nice deep breath in, bringing that grounded, stable energy from the earth up into the heart. And then giving your heart permission just to open, maybe just a millimeter more. After our 3 breaths, pulling energy up from the earth, now we breathe from the sky down into the heart. So as you inhale, it's as if you're pulling awareness down through the crown of the head into the heart. You think about pulling love, goodness, light down through the crown into the heart. And on that exhale, there's an opening, there's a softening. So 3 times, counting your own breath, pulling sky into the heart, pulling love, light, heaven, air, expansiveness down through the crown and into your heart. And as the heart exhales, there's some softening, there's some opening. So we do 3 breaths up, ground to heart. We do 3 breaths down, sky to heart. And then for our last 3 breaths here, we just let these energies mix in the heart. Earth energy, sky energy, heaven, earth, masculine, feminine, do, rest. It's all this energy merging together in the heart. So breathing into the heart. And as you exhale, there's some opening and softening. Each exhale allows you to open just a little more. And then before we open our eyes, take a moment to align. It always feels like an alignment to me. We align with gratitude. One thing today could be a cup of coffee you had this morning at 7 a.m. One thing that you feel a lot of gratitude for today on this Monday, this new moon, or whenever you're listening to this. Bring that gratitude into the heart as well. We know that this form of breathing, this connection with gratitude, allows a deeper coherence between our heart and our head. We allow everything to align. And then we'll add one final tool in here. My heart. Is there anything you need me to know in this moment? My heart, is there anything you need me to know in this moment? We might also add my heart if there's any message in this class tonight that I need to hear and act upon. Please make that very clear to me. And then before you open your eyes, bring your palms together. Just rub your palms together, create some friction, create some heat. You can eventually place those hands over the eyes. And then let your eyes blink open, adjust to the light, and then release the hands down. Thanks, everyone, for that. It's powerful to do that together. also really grounds me as the teacher. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So tonight, we've talked about in this course so far, physical resilience. We've talked about emotional and mental resilience. And now tonight we're on to social resilience, the resilience of relationship, essentially. So the deal is we are social creatures. We are meant to have more interdependence, more dependence on one another than independence, despite what our culture often acknowledges and teaches us. We're wired for belonging. We literally need other people in our arenas. And these relationships that we need and that we desire are very complicated. And I know I'm speaking to the choir because our relationships are impacted by past traumas, our hurt, our doubts, our challenges with trust, our insecurities, our moods, whether we've eaten or not, right? Like it just, what's going on in our internal system so impacts our relationships. And so relationships get very, very complicated. Any show of hands about being in complicated relationships? They just are really, really challenging. Now, the thing about relationships that I actually want to point out is that relationships are meant to have challenges. And I don't think I fully grasped this, definitely not in my experience growing up. Somewhere along the line, and I'm not saying my parents necessarily taught me this, but I took in this belief system that relationships were supposed to be easy. And if they weren't easy, they weren't the right relationship, or there was something wrong with that relationship. Versus understanding that all relationships are going to have challenge. Every relationship is going to come to some impasse at some point in time. And this is normal. This is actually to be expected. And we can work through challenge in relationships. So this is really key. Now, I do want to bring up a couple things, and I'm not going to talk very long about this, but I feel like it bears a little bit of an explanation here. Of course, we all desire this connection. As Brene says, it's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives, the connections we have. But we all have an attachment style, and there's a lot of work on attachment theory. And again, I could probably talk for a full hour on attachment theory, attachment style, but this is essentially how well, when we were growing up, we've already talked about in this program, the importance of those first 7 to 10 years, which is why we're doing a lot of hypnosis work, because that's one way to rewire some of the patterning and program we got early on in life. But we also, in those first 7 to 10 years, that's where our attachment style got laid down. Attachment is about our caregiver's ability to attune to what we needed in the moment as babies, as toddlers, as children. And so attachment style is very much related to what was going on between us and our caregiver. Now, the one on this top left, the secure attachment, this, my friends, is only about 62% of the population. So just a little over half of us feel comfortable in connection with other people. We're able to be resilient, reciprocal. We don't live in a deep fear of abandonment. So that's only about 62%. The other percents, about essentially 40%, are challenged in relationships, right? And so if there's an anxious attachment, this comes across sometimes as being clingy or needy or super uber sensitive. If we're more dismissive, avoidant in our attachment style, we often avoid getting close to anyone. We just kind of keep our walls up. We're really distant. And then this fearful, avoidant attachment style is sort of a mix. So we balance between, I need closeness, I need you, I need you, I need you, and I'm going to push you away. Like, come to me, I need you. No, now I hate you, right? So these are different attachment styles that we all go in and out of. Now, one of the things that I really want to help you understand is if you see yourself, and I'm sure you see yourself in one or maybe several of these attachment styles, therapy definitely can help us with our attachment style. And we can learn, we can practice having secure attachments, right? So we have the capacity to rewire, even if we didn't have a caregiver who could really attune to us growing up, we can learn how to be in more secure attachment styles. So that's the really good news of all of this. So why do we need each other so much? We all need each other so much. Why? Because we cannot see ourselves on our own. It requires us to be in relationship to someone else to actually see who we really are. So I sometimes have this deep desire to go to Tibet and the Himalayas and meditate in a cave for the rest of my life. Like sometimes I have that deep desire. But I actually am fairly certain that although I would be very curious about all the little intricacies of my mind that might come through that much meditation, that I am going to learn much more about myself in relationship to other people. So this is really key. The relationships we have in our life reflect back to us what's going on inside of us. And that's what this whole conversation is about tonight, is what's going on inside of you. What's going on inside of you? The world simply reflects back to us via people, via situations, what is actually going on inside of us. So we're going to do a little journey here for a moment. So again, if you're in a place where you won't be disturbed, I'd like you just to take a moment to close your eyes. We're going to journey through a park tonight. So we're going to use our capacity for mental imagery to show us something about ourselves. So I want you to first, before we start out, bring to mind something that you're really nervous or anxious about. Something in your life that's causing you some distress and fear. It might be something around money. It might be something with a partner, your health, a child. Ooh, I can feel you guys going there because I'm feeling your fear right now. All right, so I want you to stay. We're not going to stay here indefinitely, but I want you to stay in that space of fear, the thing that you're really worried and concerned about, something that really maybe even keeps you up sometimes at night. And I want you to imagine that you are now walking through a park. You're walking through the middle of a park in the center of a city. And I want you just to sort of take in this park. Notice who's in the park. Notice what the earth looks like. Notice if there are places to sit. Notice the time of day. Just take in any sort of details of this park that you can. What's the weather like? Is the sun out? All right, and then take a nice deep breath in, rub those palms again, just bring your hands to your eyes and blink your eyes open. All right, so that was journey number one. We connected with some fear and then we walked through a park. What was your park like? I want to hear it in the chat box. What was your park like? What did you notice about your park? What images came to mind about your park? What time of day was it? What was the park like? Dead of night. Yes, dark trees. Amy says a park from my childhood. A bench afternoon. It was cloudy. Central Park, people walking. It was sunny, peaceful. Tunnels, nighttime, trees, Lincoln Park, sun and shadowy. Okay. England, beautiful, beautiful. Overcast, mid-afternoon. It's going fast now. Okay, beautiful. Thank you all. Okay, we're going back in. We're going back to the park. Come back inwards. Feel your feet, feel your pelvis. Take a breath in to your heart. All right, so now we're going to connect with love, and we're going to connect with gratitude again. I'm bringing to mind a person, an animal, a place, something for which we have so much uncomplicated love and appreciation. I can feel myself rubbing my heart. I can feel all of you right now. My whole body is getting very warm right now as we tap into love. And now we're going to go back to a park in the middle of a city. And as you walk into this park, we've just tapped into love. Again, I want you to notice, what's the park look like? Where are you? What's the weather like? What do you see around you? Are there people out and about? Is the sun shining? What is the park like? Rub your palms together. Bring them to your eyes. Blink the eyes open. All right. Was your park different? Round two. Some of you had a pretty beautiful park on the first go round, despite being starting out in fear. Yeah, so it was still the same. So for some of you, it was still the same. Some of you, it was freer, warmer, more expansive, more cozy. Same park, but there were madrigal singers there. I like that, Danny. More of an appreciation. So it was the same. Ooh, I like that. It was the same park, but I appreciated more of what I saw. Same park, but more playful, more sunny, right? More active. The sky was amazing, brighter, right? Different park, but I'm not alone this time. Beautiful. Okay, so this is such a simplistic example, which I think many of you are sort of seeing it and getting it, that it's the same park. But based on what our energy is like, if we're in the energy of fear, which we all go there, we all go to worry, we all go to distress, literally what we see will be different than if we are in the vibration of love. So the first time I did this exercise at a retreat that I was on with Deepak Chopra, and I remember his voice leading us through this. And I remember being in fear. I don't know what I was anxious or nervous about, but I'm sure there was something. My park was dark, and there were like used needles, and there were hooded figures. And I remember feeling very anxious. And then as soon as we shifted into love, it was daytime and it was light and it was beautiful. And there were flowers and there were dogs and there were people and there were kites. So it was such an interesting perspective that just something as simple as the internal space that we're in impacts how we view the world. Same park, different perspectives. So the point of all of this is that the energy, starting to know yourself so well and knowing what energy you're carrying, what mood state you're in, where your head is at, are all so key, because we are literally creating our world. We're creating our experience. And so to be able to kind of own where you're at and know what's happening internally is, I believe, one of our greatest steps towards deeper resilience. We must take, and I feel like this is one of the big themes for tonight, my big theme of my training that I just went through. We have to take responsibility for our energy and for our experience in this lifetime. There's such deep responsibility that we can step into, which is so beautiful. When we really start to take responsibility for our life experience, instead of being stuck in the victim space or the blaming space, it's so powerful to finally step into owning and taking responsibility. So many of you know, and I'm sure this is not going to be a new book for you, because she definitely was all over for a long time, Jill Bolte Taylor. If you haven't read this book, it's phenomenal. Irony, this is a Harvard-trained neuroanatomist who was in her lab and started to have a stroke. And because she was an expert on the brain, she literally was sort of watching the whole process happen. And now she's got full cognitive capacity back, but watched basically her left hemisphere go offline. Our left hemisphere is the part of us that is linear, logical. It makes sense. We make sense of our future based on our memories from the past. All of this stopped working because she had a big bleed happening in the left side of her brain. So she was just essentially living from the right side of her brain, which is the space of mindfulness, present moment awareness. She was very much in almost a space of blissfulness because she was just in each moment by moment. And she became very aware, just living from the right hemisphere of her brain. She didn't have any memories of who she was, of the fact that she was a neuroanatomist. She remembered nothing. She remembered nobody in her life because that's the function of the left hemisphere. But she writes how she could sense energy. So she could sense the energy from the doctors who had given up on her. She could sense the energy of the nurses who didn't have time to actually really care for her. She could sense the caregivers who believed that she could get better. So even though she didn't know, she didn't have any logical analysis, she was so tapped into sort of the energetics that she sensed and knew people's energies. So it was to her great surprise one day when someone named Mimi came into her room. And this Mimi was exuding such deep love and concern. And she didn't know what a Mimi was, but this Mimi pulled back the blankets and got in bed with her and held her and hugged her. And so she realized, so this Mimi is a pretty good thing. Well, Mimi was her mother, is her mother. I think her mother has since passed. But I love this picture. You can just see from this picture of Mimi that she looks like she radiates warmth, right? And goodness. So one of the theses of Jill Bolte Taylor's work is that we have to be so conscious of what energy we bring into spaces, that we are responsible for our energy. It is precious. And we have such a deep impact on people without even consciously knowing, which is again why the know thyself, do thy work, feel thy feelings is so key, so that we are coming in as pure of a channel as possible, because our energy without a doubt impacts people around us. It's something called entanglement. The scientists often call it entanglement. And this scientist in particular, this is also a well-known book, Bruce Lipton. I love this book, The Biology of Belief. He is a cell biologist who he does all kinds of beautiful, energetic work as well. And he really writes about how all of our energy is sort of interconnected and entangled. So these next couple slides, I actually did a whole resilience workshop with him online, actually. And these two slides, I was mostly listening to it in my car. So when I saw these two slides, they stuck in my consciousness because they were so powerful. So let me see if I can break it down. So there's something called constructive interference, according to Dr. Lipton. And this is this idea that, let's say the red wave A is person A, let's just say Betsy, and wave B is person B, let's say Sean, because Sean's in the room with me. So if Betsy and Sean have the same vibrational energy going, meaning we're on the same wavelength, we're vibrating at a similar place, when we come together, you can see in the second line, B line, our waves add into each other. And what happens in the C line? Our energy gets bigger. So we all know what this feels like when we are, in the term of the words of my 17-year-old son, when we're vibing with someone, right? Our energy expands, right? So I can think of multiple people in my life that when I am around them, I get more joyous. I feel more energized. It's like my energy is bigger, and it truly is. So when we're in same resonance with someone, we have the capacity to experience life in even broader, bigger ranges. Constructive interference, another name for this would be falling in love, right? When we fall in love with someone, we get major constructive interference. So, which is why we feel so alive, so vibrant, so, filled with joyfulness, right? This is constructive interference. This is all essentially physics. Now, of course, the opposite can happen. Let's say Sean and I are in the same room, but we're totally energetically off, right? We're not in resonance with one another. One of us have had really something challenging happen. So when that happens, when we come together, we flatline, meaning I maybe was in a really high expansive mood, and I get around someone whose mood is at a different resonance level, and boom, we both flatline, right? This is called destructive interference. And we've all had this happen, right? Every single one of us have had that feeling of like, I'm feeling great. Oh, I walk into that room. It was a total wet blanket. My energy just tanked. Now, we have to break this down a little bit more because when I first heard this, of course you go into like, oh no, I need to make sure that I avoid being around anyone who's in a bad state, right? Impossible. We can't do that, right? Like it's impossible to be like, oh, they're not resonating very high today and it's going to flatline me, so I'm just going to avoid. The other piece of this research that I think is really important to bring up is that when we are able to physiologically stay in a place of resonance in ourself, so that resilient inner core, when we're able to internally stay in stability, we actually don't flatline as much, right? So when we're able to stay in our own energy, we're not so impacted by the negativity that is inevitably going to be around us. There's also, I'm going to do one more screen share here. I forgot that I had this. There's also this great research out of UCSD and Harvard. This is also an amazing book about social networks. And this book is all about interconnectivity. We essentially are only 6 degrees of separation away from anyone on this planet, which that is kind of mind-blowing in and of itself. And we are 3 degrees away. Like if we have a happy friend, even 3 degrees away from us, meaning it could be a friend of a friend of a friend, we still benefit from that. So this whole research of these very smart people basically found that happiness moves like wildfire through social networks. So if you are happy, if you are in a high vibration, that impacts 3 degrees out. So there's all this research about our happiness goes up if we have a happy friend. Our happiness goes up even higher if we have happy neighbors. I mean, it's all data, it's all science, but I think it's phenomenal. Now, the piece that I want to bring home is that they found that negative mood states do not move as robustly through social networks as positive mood states. So if you're sitting at home thinking like, oh my God, I'm in such a dark place right now, which we've all been in, like, I'm just going to avoid my people even more because I don't want to flatline them. I want you to know sadness does not spread through social networks like happiness does. And when we are in those dark mood states, the reason we're working towards resilience, my friends, is so that we can be with people who are challenged. We can feel into, oh, I need to reach out to this person because I feel really full. I feel really stable right now. And so this isn't an avoidance thing. This isn't a protective thing. I'm going to push away this person, but draw this person close. To me, it's even more motivation to stay as resonant in myself as possible so that if I'm around some type of negativity, I don't flatline as quickly, and that my own internal sense of resilience and happiness spreads out and really makes an impact in the networks that I'm engaged in. So, what do you think of all this? It's kind of, I love how data driven it is, because on an intuitive sense, it fits, right? It fits. So, I mean, I get this question a lot from people like, well, what do I do? I've got a really negative coworker, or my partner's in a really dark place. They're dealing with depression right now. Like, how do I take care of myself? How do I protect myself? And this was actually a question that was asked to this really master teacher of energy that I was with last week. Someone said, how do you protect yourself? And her answer was so brilliant. She's like, if you are channeling enough love and light, you don't need protection. And it's so simplistic, but it feels so true to me. I know that for sure. I have done lots of work. If I know I'm going into a hard situation, there was a time in my life I worked in the basement of a big hospital, and it was very dark and dingy and really low vibration down there. And I would always think, okay, I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to protect myself. But her point is that if we are working at really keeping our channel of light and love very open and very vibrant, you don't need to put up protection, because you're going to attract in more of that. And, the theories I just shared with you, that light and love is very robust and goes out lots of directions. So then it begs the question, well, how do you channel more light and love? Right? How do we do that? It sounds so lofty and great, Betsy, but I have a real life with real kids and real problems and real challenges. How do I actually start to channel more light and love through me? So the way we channel more light and love through us is we have to get to know our darkness. It's maybe not the answer you were expecting, but for us to really be in a place where we're channeling more light and love, we have to know our shadow. We have to get in touch with the parts of ourselves that we have rejected, we've pushed away, we don't want to look at, we don't have time to deal with. So the more shadow work you do, the more light and love that you channel. And that's essentially those 5 days that I went through was deep shadow work. It was really hard. It was really challenging. And I know is what allows me to be in more light, the more deep and dark I go in terms of my shadow work. So let's talk about what the heck is shadow work. There are so many forms of shadow work. And if people come to me and say, I really am ready for deep transformation, I will universally say, well, shadow work, that's it. You want to transform, you want to be in more light, you got to go into the dark. So what is shadow work? Carl Jung, who I quote all the time, I'm sure every time you guys see a Carl Jung quote, you're like, oh, here she goes again. Carl Jung, the great psychiatrist from the early 1920s, writes that until you make your unconscious conscious, so until you bring your shadow up to the light, it's going to rule your life and you will just call it fate. So we have challenging things that happen. We have bad things that come into our life. We're just like, well, that was fateful. That was bad fate. That was bad karma, we sometimes say now. And Carl Jung would have really challenged this. And he would say, no, if we're actually doing our work, going into our shadow, sort of looking at the parts of ourselves that we've abandoned, that we pushed away, then we actually have more agency in our life. We actually get to make more decisive decisions about our life instead of just having the subconscious mind come up and essentially bite us in the ass, to say it in a really clear, concise way. So what is exactly our shadow? It's truly anything that we've disowned, we've rejected, we don't want to look at, we don't have time for. the more we push these things away, the more they grow. But shadow work, I know when I first started to really dive into shadow work, it feels so dark and scary. It feels so overwhelming. Like, ugh, who wants to go into the deepest recesses of their mind and pull out all the shit that they don't want to deal with? That sounds horrible. But in the shadow isn't just the stuff we reject. Well, it's all the stuff we reject, but we reject a lot of our own light. Sometimes some theorists call this our light shadow. I've heard some people talk about it as our golden shadow. So also in the subconscious terrain that I'm talking about lays our gifts, our talents, untapped skills, all this potential that we never knew was possible is also in our shadows. So it's not universally dark, bad things we find. It's also, we find a lot of our greatness in the shadow, which is, I think, why then we can channel more light and love. The goal of shadow work is just to know ourselves. It's the first step towards resilience. Know yourself. Get to know yourself. These are some of the things that are in the shadow. We could triple this list. There's all kinds of stuff in the shadow. We don't know what's in the shadow until we start to work in it and we start to have the courage and the guidance to actually go into it. Now, there is no way to experience the heights of love, the altitude of our aspiration, the exhilaration of our giving, the fulfillment of our caring, the gifts of our gratitude, or the grace of a smile without experiencing all that prevents these things. That's a powerful statement. So what Gary Zukav is saying is that if you want to experience the heights of love, if you want to channel beautiful light, if you want to be so engaged in the joys of giving, the gifts of gratitude, you got to be willing to figure out what's getting in the way of me being able to have the most expansive, vibrant human experience possible. Well, it's typically the subconscious blocks that started in childhood, and we just keep adding to them as we go through life. So how do we work with shadow? These are some of the tools. Are so many ways for us, even just looking at our daydreams. What are we daydreaming about? You know, another great way to kind of understand our shadow is to look at the people we are so drawn to, right? Typically people that we put up on a pedestal and we are drawn to, they represent our golden shadow. They represent an aspect we have in ourselves that we can't see our own, but we can see it in that movie star, or we can see it in that friend of a friend that we're totally drawn to, that they're representing to us a part of our golden shadow that we have not held on to, we have not gone to. Likewise, we have people in our lives who are like, I cannot stand that person. They drive me crazy. They drive me crazy. Well, they are showing us a part of ourselves that we have rejected that drive us crazy, right? So that's another kind of quick and dirty way to be like, what am I not seeing in myself? So the reason I added in hypnosis for this Tend Her section is because hypnosis is so beautiful at starting to get us into that subconscious mind. And dream work is another, just hands down, probably my favorite way to work with the subconscious mind. I am in 2 weeks from tonight. I felt really drawn in the last couple of weeks. I'm pulling this out again. So I teach a course called The Heroine's Journey. Last year we did it. There were 50 of us in the course. We did it for 6 months. That was a long heroine's journey. We did it from the fall equinox to the spring equinox. I'm shortening it down. I'm making it smaller because that was 6 months is a long time to work in shadow. We're going to do 9 weeks of shadow work. And it's going to start 2 weeks from tonight. It's the same time slot, Monday night, 6 to 7, essentially. And we're going to work with all the tools that allow us. And we're capitalizing on the darkest part of the year. This time of year, at least if you're in the Northern Hemisphere with us, is hands down the best time of year to do shadow work. It's dark. There's more darkness. It's the time where we're already drawn to go in and down. Shadow work is not that you can't do shadow work in the summer, but there's too many distractions in summer, right? We're meant to be out in the world, you know, gardening, playing, swimming. wintertime is hands down, we're supported by the season, which is why it's powerful. So here's some of the details. Sean's going to put something in the chat box. You get the class every Monday night. You're going to get yoga with that, dream work, and there's some chances to do some one-on-one work with me as well. So if you have questions, email us. But especially after I did that 5-day intensive in Spain, which was pretty much pure shadow work. And again, I saw the power of it. I felt the power of it. I felt the deep energetic shift. It was sort of the final push for me. I think the reason if I'm at all really transparent with all of you, the reason I think I was resistant to maybe doing it is that I'm right in there with you guys in the shadows. So yes, I'm guiding. I'm holding the space. I'm holding the container. I know how to do that. I'm skilled at doing that. But I'm also diving into the shadows. And I have learned after teaching these types of courses for long enough that sometimes I'm required to go in even deeper. And so I have a lot of stuff unfold for me when I teach classes like this. And it's great and it's beautiful. I'm not scared of it. And I know it's all for the highest good of myself and for everything of how life is unfolding. But I had to ask myself, do I have the energy? Do I have the energy to go in and do 9 weeks of deep shadow work and hold space? And after this 5 days in Spain, I was like, yeah, I do. This is such the perfect time to go in and do this work. And what someone told me who was in the class last year, she's like, I had such a great spring and summer because I really went in and I did all this hard inner work and I learned so much. And then I reached spring and I was like, okay, I did the work. I'm going to play. I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to really be in the expansiveness of life. So I do think there's something about this time of year and doing it in community. We're doing it. You're not doing it alone. You've got a guide and you've got a network of other people doing it. So if you have questions, let me know. Okay. Where I want to end today, and I hope I've inspired you to begin to think about a little bit, is that we need to take responsibility for ourselves, for the energy we bring. It's so important that we understand that the problems in our life are not out there. They're not in the world. They're not in the other person who's screwing things up. It's so easy for us. And I have been there for so many years and decades in the space of, well, if only he would do this, if only this would happen, right? We cannot change our problems by changing the outside world or changing people around us. This is an inside job. And there's no way forward except by going into ourselves. And we do try to keep fleeing this. Believe me, my friends, we flee into, I'll just take another class. I'll just get another accomplishment. I'll just have a little more food. I'll just find another lover. I'll just, get into some more acquisition. I'll buy another beautiful sweater. I'll, go on another great vacation, right? Like we keep trying to avoid the inevitable. We keep trying to take our energy and our awareness out into the world. Like if the world is beautiful, the world gives me what I want. It doesn't work. I mean, it works for short periods of time, but we really have to be committed to knowing thyself, feeling thyself, clearing thyself out, being willing to work with what's in there so that then the energy we bring, the vibration we bring really does start to shift the people, the situations, the relationships we're in, right? The relationships we're in. Let me see. Let me feel in if there's anything else that I wanted to say about that. Yeah. Okay. The most empowering thing we can do is to really be the change we want to see in the world. And that always starts by this inward journey. So I am going to send you off well, I'm going to stay on for questions, but I'm going to send you off with just the encouragement that you know what you need. You know what needs to change. You know where you're stuck. You know what challenges keep popping up over and over, because that's how life goes too, right? We just see the pattern. It just shows up, the same lesson in a different guise. You actually know. So I really do trust the process of life and trust that everything that's showing up for us, the situation, the person, the challenge, the financial commitment, whatever, it's all showing up in service to our own growth and evolution. Like everything that's showing up is there to help us grow and expand if we can begin to see it and take responsibility. So I send you off. Clearly, there are tools that you learned. There's content in these 4 classes. There's ways to continue to work with me. And you know what comes next. You know what the next right step is for you. You know the phone call you need to make. You know the book that you need to read. You know the person you need to go talk to, right? We all have this inner knowing. That's that heart work, right? Getting out of the head and listening into the heart. So I'm just going to encourage you to take the next step. I don't know what that is for you. I don't know what that means for you. I don't know what that's going to look like, but take the next right step. And then when we do that, then the next one appears and the next one appears and the next one appears. All right. That's it. I 4 minutes early, I'm done. Questions. Is there any questions about anything that we talked about today? Someone is asking, what about the rubbing of the hands and placing over your eyes? Cool. What I find is that, I mean, I don't have you in for very long. Like we drop in pretty quickly, but this visceral, there's like a visceral awakening of energy by rubbing the palms. You're creating energy between your hands and then just bringing that to the eyes. It's almost like you revitalize your sense of sight. And also sometimes blinking the eyes open and taking in the world around you right away after you've been in and down can feel a little bit jarring. So this is just sort of like a nice intermediary step. You bring the heated hands to your eyes. You sort of let the energy soak into the eyes. You keep your hands over your eyes as you blink the eyes open, so it's not so jarring. And then you take your hands down. You're like, okay, I'm back. So that's maybe a simple explanation. And for me, it just feels good. It feels good to sort of do that. Is shadow work risky with those of us with CPTSD? You know, like yes and no. I'm going to say yes and no. I have, so of course, everything can be risky, and especially if we have a history of trauma. I know this. You can get triggered in situations that you wouldn't even imagine that you could get triggered. So life is risky, right? But if you do shadow work in a space where you're creating strong container, so that's what really I believe shadow work requires, is it requires a sense of security and safety and container. And so all great shadow work, all great hypnosis, if you notice hypnosis is shadow work, we've been doing it every week. What do I start every hypnosis with? We start with safe place. We drop into safe place. We let our body relax. We allow our mind to be in safety. We start from there. And then week 2, we went into where some constriction in the body. That's shadow work, right? The body is the subconscious mind. So we've already been doing shadow work. Even in this program, you just haven't maybe heard it being called shadow work. So of course it can be risky, but if there's safe container, if you're starting from safe stability, being in the body, breath, I believe that there are ways for us to move into shadow in a safe way. And I think that all shadow work is best done in slow and steadfast ways. Now, the 5-day thing I went on, like she threw us into the deep end. Like we were deep out in the ocean, class 1. Granted, most of the people that were there already had some containers that were in place, right? But there were moments where I'm like, oh, we're going there already? Okay. So yes, of course it can be triggering, and I think it can be done safely. And I think it is the way towards beginning to transform. But the safety, the security, the stability, the container, the safe guide, all of that can be really important and helpful. You're welcome for this program. It's been my joy to have you all show up and take part in it and learn from it, because I'm a big believer in ripple effect, that even just one little thing shifts in you and that ripples out into your family and into your spaces and your places that you're in. And this is how we change the world. As we change ourselves, as we clear ourselves, then all those little ripples go out. So I'm really grateful to all of you that you have an interest in this and you are willing to do that inner work, that inner diving. I think that's what's going to shift our planet, honestly. Diane, I'm so glad that you listened to yourself. And as I just said a minute ago, I do believe that you know what your next move is. I think we all, if we take the time to go in and listen, we actually all know. We might not clear, I would say most of us never get clear on what the very end point is going to be. We can't know that, but we can know like the next little step. This is the next right step that I need to take, and the next right step that I need to take. Yeah, so Diane is asking about all the hypnosis, and you're going to get a final hypnosis on Wednesday, which is going to kind of tie together all the parts that we've been doing in these 4 weeks. And this whole course actually will be available to you indefinitely. So it just lives on the website and you can have access to it forever, as many times as you want. As I said, in I think the first hypnosis class I taught, I have a hypnosis recording from a teacher from years ago, and I go back to that recording over and over and over. I don't listen to the course anymore, but I listen to the recording over and over. So yeah, if those recordings really speak to you, I would encourage you to keep using them, and your psyche will know when you're done with them. That's the beautiful thing about it too. It's like you keep listening as long as you need it, and then something sometimes clicks and you're like, nope, I'm done. So Karen, I'm so glad you learn things, because you've taken so many things from me. I would expect I would just be repeating myself. So that is, I'm taking that as high praise, Karen. So thank you for that. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Carrie. Whitney, I love, love, love this question. I want to give this question a little bit of time because it's a powerful one. What does doing such deep work on yourself tend to do in your marriage or your closest relationships? Yeah, it changes it. It changes our relationships. It's just going to happen. It's like that slide I showed you with the different resonances. So there, of course, are challenges that can happen. There are relationships that can end when your resonance becomes significantly different from a friend or a partner's, and you just keep flatlining together, right? They're just like nothing is sort of coming together anymore. So there is, of course, there's some risk that some relationships might change or might just sort of fade away. There's also, whenever you keep working on yourself and improving, or I don't want to say improving, it's not right or wrong, but as your resonance changes, you start to draw in other people who are at similar resonance levels. So you start to meet new friends, you start to meet new colleagues. But I will say that what can also happen is that as you internally shift and change, you make positive invitations to your partner or your friends to change. So I didn't share this piece of research tonight, but there's this beautiful research on a scientific thing called entrainment, which is essentially how our energies sort of align, entangle with one another. And this research shows that the person who has the most power in a relationship is the one who's got the most coherent, calm, regulated nervous system. So as you're doing this deep internal work, you have real power to subconsciously begin to shift your partner. So I definitely saw that in my relationship, is that as I was doing all this clearing out, all this shadow work, it was actually putting a real, a wall between us. It was a real challenge, right? Because we weren't able to connect in the same way. But through a lot of work, he started to be able to see the benefit of this work and is now on his own journey, right? So just because you shift and change, you might actually be the hope that someone needs to sort of dig into their own internal self and begin to work. But that may not always happen. I mean, it could go either way. But my question for you is, do you want to be the most expansive, vital, authentic, alive person that you can be? That's in your best interest, absolutely, hands down. It's in your best interest to do the internal work because you're going to be more of who you truly are. But it may mean that there are some challenges that come along with that as well. So, and we all have free will. We get to choose. And so we get to go down the path of self-evolution, or we might choose like, nope, not anymore. I'm getting off, or I'm going to take a different turn. And that's okay. We all get self-choice. We all get free will here. Katie asked, any good resources for working with money and fear? So Katie, and all of you, there's a whole series on the root chakra in my courses on Dr. Yoga Mama. That would be a great one to work with. Money fear lives in our sacral chakra, which is the pelvis, the hips, the root. And so anything you can do to really strengthen and stabilize your root energy, so staying grounded, doing a lot of hip opening work, doing affirmations associated with the sacral chakra. These are all really like there's a bunch of interesting studies on low back pain and its connection to money fear. So as people start to work with their money fear and their abundance, often back pain changes. So I'm just gonna, Katie, I know you know about the chakras. I'm just gonna really direct you to doing some really deep root and second chakra work. And the book that's also coming in for me that I want to suggest for you is it's upper limits, the upper limit problem. So much of when we get stuck in money fear, we have what's called an upper limit. Like we believe we can only earn this so much, or we're only worthy of having this much abundance in our life. And so we create these sort of upper limits for ourselves. It's such a powerful book. It's really well known, but Katie, that came through for you as well. So Whitney, your follow-up question is, how do you handle a spouse who doesn't do any shadow work? You don't handle it. You do, like, this is that self-responsibility, is that we actually don't get to control or change anyone in our life but ourselves. It's a really hard concept because most of us are in relationships or in situations where, you know, we do like to be in control. We do want them to change. And we have absolutely no power in the people we love, having them work on themselves so they can be in more love and kindness and expansion and light. It's not our job. It's such a hard one, Whitney. So all you have control over is your inner space. And I do know that as you work on your inner space, people benefit from that around you. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it that it's easy. So just keep going in and down in yourself. Erin, great to have you on here. Barbara, great question. Wanting connection. Done a lot of my life alone, and I'm okay with that. It gets hard to be on a seesaw by yourself. I want playmates. I keep doing things like this and it doesn't seem to move the needle. I think this question is super powerful and vulnerable. And so first, I just want to like take a moment to honor your vulnerability and your willingness to ask this question. And this is the challenge is that like on some level, we know connection is really good for us. And yet, if we have lived a fairly solitary life or an introvert, we work at home alone, it can be really easy to settle into that as well. And there can be great happiness and security and love by being alone, right? But we all need people, we all need connection. So, how do you find the connection? I mean, I guess where I would take you first is into your shadow. That's where I'm feeling myself going with you right now is what do you fear? Like, what is your fear about being in connection with other people? Is it that you'll be stuck? Is it that someone will hurt you? Is it that someone won't understand you? That someone will judge you? So for like, it's the first step is like understanding why can I not draw this into my life? If I say I want more connection, I want more people in my life, why can't I actually get there? What's in the way? And so sort of working with like what is my fear about being in connection with other people? Start there, start to journal there, start to work there. What is it about people that are scarier? What is it about connecting into more people? What does that create in me? Because if it really does create just excitement and curiosity and joy, you're going to find it. It's going to attract in. My guess is there is some kind of subconscious block, and I don't know for sure, but there's some kind of block to actually allowing that in. So I don't know, Barbara, I don't know how that resonates with you, if anything is coming through. Jody, how do you improve your attachment style? That sort of goes off the question that we just had. We improve our attachment style by being in relationship with someone who has secure attachment. So if we go back to that, those slides here of our attachment styles, and I think I told you 62% of people have a secure attachment. When we are engaged with someone who's got a secure attachment, it teaches us how, again, it's this idea of entanglement and energy and entrainment, that we can learn to be more trusting in a relationship when we're someone with who's got a secure attachment. It's harder to get secure attachment when we're in relationship with someone who's fearful avoidant or someone who's anxious or someone who's dismissive. Now, the next question is, well, where the hell do I find someone who's got a secure attachment? Which is why sometimes psychotherapy can be so useful, because what we can get with a therapist is secure attachment. They're modeling to us what it feels like to be in secure attachment with someone where they're non-reactive, they're resilient, they're holding space, they're listening. And so we learn in our nervous system what that feels like to be really seen and heard by someone. And then because we now know what that feels like, then we can start to feel for that outside of the therapeutic alliance, right? So I'm not saying that that's the only way, but we also, once you know your attachment style, and y'all, you can go, like, there's so many quizzes on this now. Attachment theories become really big. And so you can kind of go and figure out which attachment style am I. You start to look for the patterns. You start to see the patterns arise in you. That's the other thing, is once we know our attachment style, then we can see, oh, here I am feeling overly needy and clingy because I'm anxious this person's going to leave me. And we can talk about it, we can express it, we can put it out there, we can own it. So we don't, like, this is the thing about our childhoods, is that we're totally impacted by our childhoods. We are totally wired from those first 7 to 10 years, but we don't have to be slaves to our upbringing. That's why shadow work, therapeutic work, all this work we're doing in here gives us opportunities to rewire. And we have neuroplasticity, our brains. In fact, I was just talking to someone about this yesterday who'd had a really deep kind of therapeutic experience. And he was saying, like, he's like, he goes, I almost could feel like my brain is shifting, but it's not like the other stuff is erasing that old patterning. I'm just having like a new overlay. And that's exactly what neuroplasticity is we can't erase those first 10 years. Like once they're neuronally, implanted in our minds, it stays. But we can create new neuronal patterning of connected relationships, nervous system regulation, moving the body, clearing the mind. We can create new patterning that then lays over the old patterning that maybe doesn't work for us anymore. So, that is the point of all this work, right? Because none of us had perfect alignment and perfect wiring in our first 10 years. It just doesn't happen. I think we're in Earth School to grow and evolve. And so we're all going to have challenges that came through early on. So Jody, I hope that helps a little bit. I hope I answered that. Barbara, I love that you love your circle of new friends. It's great. Thanks everyone for your words. It actually really is so useful for me to see. Often I'm just talking to a screen and so I have no idea if it's going in anywhere. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to write these very kind thoughts. Danny, I don't know if I talked about a book that talks about back pain being attached to money fear, but Sarno, I think it's John Sarno, Sarno. There should be some books, I think. I can't believe I pulled that one out of the old up here. I don't know where that's pretty amazing. Oh, Erin, I love too that you saw the connection that what you've been learning with your therapist, the secure attachment style. Yep. I mean, that's the point of good therapy, is that you are held in a secure attachment. You're being given an opportunity to explore yourself in an attachment that's not going to abandon or trigger, or right, like it's a secure space for you to start to explore your own patterning. So I'm glad you got that aha. So, Barbara, I'm coming back around to your question because I see another comment you said. You're talking about how you can feel guarded, right, around men, particularly, and that you don't often feel like you belong. So there's also a really powerful technique. I was actually going to go into it tonight, and there just wasn't time. There's never time to do everything that I want to do in these classes, so I have to cut things out. But so much of what is really powerful for us is to shift how we think about ourselves. We all have like a story that we connect into about ourselves, such as I'm someone who is guarded around men. And that becomes sort of what we live from. And it's a subconscious story that's running, but because that story is there, it then informs how life is going to come to us. Just like how we walked through the park tonight, what our stories, what our attitude, what our energy is, it's going to either attract or repel things in. And so part of the tool is working with, I want to be the kind of person who, it's like, I call it like identity evolution. What's the identity you want to step into? And it sounds like, Barbara, a potential identity you might like to step into is, I'm the kind of person that's open to connection and love. I'm the kind of person who draws in exactly the type of people with whom I have similar interest. I'm the kind of person who makes friends at every turn of the corner, right? So it's like creating sort of a new version. Today, by the way, it's a perfect day to work with identity evolution because it's a new moon, right? So Barbara, I'm going to give you just like a little homework for yourself. on this new moon today, write down sort of these new ideas of I am the kind of person who, even if you don't believe it right now, when we write down the intention, then the energy comes to sort of help us evolve. So on this new moon, write down maybe a couple of things. I'm the kind of person who, I'm the kind of person who, I'm the kind of person who. New moons are great times to seed new intentions, new versions of ourselves, new ways we want to be in the world. And then the other, so write maybe 5 things. I'm the kind of person who, and then I'm also going to encourage you as a new moon practice. This is always my moon practice. I come up with the intentions and then I always write out gratitude. So not only are you going to write out maybe 5 things, I'm the kind of person who, but you're going to write out at least 5 to 10 things you're grateful for. Anytime we move into that energy of gratitude, it's easier for things to evolve and move and come to us. Gratitude is such a beautiful space from which to create. So make sure you write down things, 10 things you're grateful for. And then that's it. That's the new moon practice. See how that goes.
And that might be a good time to mention the cacao ceremonies.
Oh, yeah. So we do cacao ceremonies at Heartland on the new moon of every month. So there was a cacao ceremony here earlier today. So watch for that. You can do it online as well with us, or you can do it in person. And if you do the Reclaim program with me, the 9-week heroine journey, we will do 3 cacao ceremonies the first new moon, and we'll have 3 new moons in those 9 weeks together. So. Julie, I love that you're doing this with your coworkers. That's so awesome. Great. Did I miss any questions?
There was one about Teresa wonders how this connects to bodywork and touch therapy.
Oh, curious, Teresa, what connects to bodywork and touch therapy? I'm curious what maybe I was talking about at that moment that you wrote that. If you're still on, give me more information. Erin, yeah, there's so many good books about the moon cycles. Let me see what I have here. I have so many of them. There's something like moon magic, moonology. Yeah, there's a bunch of great ones. I love too that our cultures become so much more aligned with these seasonal shifts and the power of the moon. So I'm really big on consistently practicing new moon intention setting, which would be today. It's powerful days. And then full moons really are days of expansion and rest. So they are a day to kind of like, there's a lot of energy moving on full moon. So it's best if we just sort of slow down and rest. But you can learn, there's a ton of even like syncing your menstrual cycle with the moon cycles. Like certain moon phases are best for working harder. Other moon phases are best for rest. I mean, you can go like deep dive into the moon cycle. So Sean's going to put a couple. Yeah, I love that moonology. That's one of my favorite ones. Thank you. And moon magic is another good one. Okay. Any other questions, y'all? There's still 95 of us on. We're hanging out a while longer. I love it. And just so you know, I'll be with you on Wednesday again for hypnosis. You also have access to yoga this coming Saturday. So you'll still get links for that. And then there'll be a big email that goes out with just follow-up things to think about, sort of we could call it like aftercare, integration care sort of stuff. So yeah, okay, Kathy, this is a great question. Can you talk briefly about using divination for shadow work? And do you have any specific practices for this? Yeah, I can totally talk about this. So what is divination? Divination is just using like oracle cards. In fact, I have some down here. You can buy these anywhere. They're everywhere now. Like I have Isis cards. I have Kuan Yin cards. And so how you might use an oracle deck And how do Oracle decks work? I mean, the idea is you pose a question. You pose a question. And in fact, I have a dear friend. You guys actually met her. She's going to be at the Resilience Summit, Monica. And we sort of meet every week and we drink cacao and we actually we draw cards. And so the way divination decks work is that you just ask a question. Is it in my highest interest to boom, 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 or I need some more guidance on this. And then the way I do it is I just kind of shuffle the deck and I wait for a card that calls to me, and then I go into the book and I read about the Sisters of the Star Blossoms. Now, having done this for many, many, many years, asking questions, I mean, the Tarot would also be a divination deck. Tarot is different than like Oracle. Oracle cards, usually have themes with them, stories with them. Tarot as a whole, and the I Ching is another divination tool. So you ask a question and then you read what this card represents. And I would say almost universally, there's at least several things in the description that I'm like, yeah, that really resonates. I needed to hear that. So how do divination tools work? Our subconscious mind is just that. It's under the surface, right? So it's operating, it's impacting us, it's driving, they say 95% of our decision making, but we don't have direct access to it with our linear mind. So we have to get to it in various other ways. Again, like dream work, meditation, daydreaming, divination cards, right? Like there's various ways to really start to listen in to what's under the surface. And it's powerful. And the cool thing about divination cards is if you get an answer, you're like, doesn't resonate. Who cares? Throw it out. It doesn't matter. But if you get a nugget of something that speaks to you, brings you comfort, helps you take the next step forward, I would say it's potentially a useful healing technique. I hope that answers that. You missed the hypnosis class. Can you suggest a way for me to learn and work on this? Yeah. So, and this is a psychotherapist in private practice. So dream work, first of all, I would just start to do your own in-depth work with your own dreams. So, and there is an amazing dream therapist. Let me see if she's on. She took the class, so she might be on. I worked with her for a long time, 7 years maybe, on my dreams. I'll find out if she's okay if with me sharing. If you want her contact information, send an email to me. And so doing your own in-depth dream work, I think, is absolutely necessary before you do it with other people. So getting to know your own dreams, what they mean, the themes, and having a guide, I think, who's really seeped in Jungian work and symbolism and all of that is really helpful. So I do have a referral if she's okay with me giving out her name. I think she probably is. And dream work is so powerful. I cannot tell you how many dreams have really altered the course of my life for me, how many clients I've worked with who have a really significant dream that when we break it down and make sense of it, it's such an aha opening for them. I'm kind of amazed that more therapists don't do dream work because it's so powerful. Now, we have to remember our dreams, and sometimes that's half the battle. And there are some tools and techniques for doing that as well. Hypnosis, there are lots of hypnosis trainings out there. In fact, there's the Association of Clinical Hypnosis. I think that's the name of them. Sorry, I've got all my bookshelves below me. There's a couple hypnosis societies. Yeah, the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. They do lots of trainings. They have a really nice website. So I would encourage you to go off and do some training in it. And again, hypnosis is so incredibly powerful. It's so good at shifting people from that subconscious level. And at least this is my opinion, that talk therapy is great, but it can only take us so far because it keeps us sort of in linear thinking. It keeps us above the surface. unless you have a therapist who's really good at sort of pulling you more into the subconscious. And I find hypnosis to be just such a beautiful way to shift people's subconscious mind, which then really can change and shift how they're living their lives. So yeah, there's definitely trainings for both of them out there. Yeah. So Marianne, this is a great question. Okay, so one of a really quick and dirty way to maybe get to know your subconscious mind a little bit more. And I'm not saying this is going to always pan out exactly, but one of the things we can look at is if there are certain people in our life that we put on a pedestal, we look up to, we admire, we wish we could be like them. We're always kind of watching what they're doing. They most likely, one of the reasons we admire them so much is they have qualities that we admire because they're in us. We just can't see them in us because they are in the shadow, they're in the subconscious mind. But we can totally see, we're like, I love how that person is so free and easy in their capacity to public speak and to get up and, share their thoughts. You have that same capacity in yourself, but you just can't see it, but you can see it in someone else. So the good we see in other people is often that same goodness is in us. We just can't see it or unwilling to see it or own it. So that's the golden shadows. So in our shadow, in our subconscious mind are all of these latent gifts and talents and skill sets and, capacities that we just don't give ourselves permission or a chance to tap into. But who we admire often is like a little bit of a guidance for like, oh, but that's in me too, right? Same with people we really don't like, or we're really, every time I'm around that person, like they probably have some qualities in them. Like that person talks so much, just drives me crazy. All they do is talk, 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 talk. Well, there may be a quality of that in us that we can't see because it's in that shadow. So it can be really, and we're going to reject it. We're going to be like, no, that's not the case. So, but often it does come to light that, what we see in other people is actually in us as well. I hope that answered that for you. Yay, Catherine. I hope your dream work is what drives you. Yes, dream work. So good. So good. Contraindications for hypnosis, very few, Melanie. Someone who is quite dissociative. Well, it goes either way. Someone I would say who is a little bit more on the psychotic spectrum, it might not be the best for. People who are highly dissociative. They actually can go into hypnotic states very, very easily. But sometimes they disappear so much from the hypnotic suggestions that it doesn't take hold as deeply. But as I said in that very first video on hypnosis, you cannot get stuck in hypnosis. It's not dangerous. It's a naturally occurring state. The person doing hypnosis is just guiding people into this naturally occurring state where you're more open to suggestion and new ways of being in your life. So it's not at all a dangerous thing. I think the reason we have so many misconceptions and fears is because of just how it's portrayed in the media. So, and those darn after prom high school hypnosis things that go on. My son had one after his prom last year. He came home and he was amazed at it. And I was like, Peter, I can tell you exactly how they did that. And he goes, what? I'm like, I do hypnosis. What? So, yeah. All right. Yeah, Amy, looking forward to Friday. I know we have a nice group of people coming together for the Resilience Summit. So thanks everyone for being here. How do you train? Okay, yeah. How do you train yourself to remember your dreams? It doesn't say anything about you, Diane, so don't worry. It doesn't say anything bad if you can't remember your dreams. First thing is you have to, right before you go to bed at night, sometimes I literally will stay out loud. I would like to have a dream and I would like to remember my dream, right? So it's like a consistent reminder right before you go to sleep. Tonight I will dream, and well, we dream every single night. Tonight I will remember my dream. Please help me remember my dream. I would like to remember my dream, right? So you sort of put the suggestion and the desire that I want to remember my dreams. So that's sort of the first step. The other step is that what happens is if we wake up to an alarm, often, even if we're in a dream state, the alarm pops us out so quickly we can't pull back any of the content. So if you can wake up without an alarm, that can help you with dream recall. Also, when you first wake up, instead of like popping out of bed or changing positions, if you can stay in the position where you first wake up, that sometimes will help with dream recall. Like even if I roll over onto the other side after I first wake up, my dream is gone. I have to stay in the same position. And then if I do get little tidbits of the dream, I don't move, I don't open my eyes, and then I try to recreate it. I try to like stay with it, see if anything more comes to me. Because even just like one little tidbit can be enough to then open the doorway to more of the memory coming forth. And then you have to write it down right away. So I used to keep a dream journal next to my bed. Now I actually just use my phone. So I either voice message the dream or I put it in my notes. So, but you have to catch it quick because if you don't catch them right away, boom, they're gone. But Diane, I would just start with out loud saying to yourself every night, I would like to remember my dreams. I would like to remember my dreams, and see if they can come. Kim, I'm so glad to hear the hypnosis exercises have been so helpful. I felt very strongly this year about adding them in. So I'm really glad to hear. Thank you for letting me know that. Yep, Barb, that idea of takes one to know one. You're right. All the things you appreciated about that phenomenal teacher of yours, all those qualities are in you. Absolutely. Melanie had an adverse reaction. I think, Melanie, was that to the hypnosis, maybe?
It continues. That's
Oh. Oh, yeah. Those college hypnosis events, yes, they are, let's just say the stage hypnotist doesn't usually hold a very strong container. Yeah. And they're meant to be silly and funny. And so this suggests that people really are hypnotized on stage, by the way. They're totally hypnotized, but they also are set up with lots of reinforcement to know that they're there to be funny and to create laughter. And so, yeah, I mean, suggestions, this is the thing at those kind of stage hypnosis shows, that people often do come out of hypnosis because the suggestion they're being given, the mind is like, I don't want to sing like a chicken, or I don't want to pretend that I'm naked running down the hallway. And so they pop out of the hypnosis, and then, the hypnotist usually is like gets them off stage very quickly. But yeah, I know that they're funny, but I think it's a real disservice to the power of hypnosis. And it certainly makes my job harder as a therapist using hypnosis to try to explain to people that it is safe, that it is not dangerous, that you're not under my control. I'm putting you in a space where your mind is very open, and I'm only going to offer suggestions that are beneficial to you. I'm not going to make you sing like Elvis. Katie has a great question. She notices that she will often spin out during hypnosis and miss most of it. Is there a way to stay more present in it? Katie, that's not an uncommon thing too. Also, if we have a history of any kind of trauma, if we have a history of being more dissociative, meaning we sort of leave our bodies quite easily, sometimes things like hypnosis or yoga nidra, it is harder to stay fully present. Now, there's sort of differing research on it. Some research says that people they can totally not remember any of the hypnosis and they still benefit from the suggestion because the subconscious mind is hearing the suggestion versus your conscious mind, which is dissociated and floated away. So that's one thing, is that you still might be benefiting even if you can't remember it. But there is something nice about hovering in that liminal space between being in the conscious mind and sort of being a little bit more in the subconscious. Like there's sort of, it's that in-between state. That can be a really sweet place to sort of be, where you're sort of still conscious, but you're in the subconscious. And so, Katie, just something as simple as, I'm making the intention right now that in this hypnosis session, I stay awake and aware. So sometimes it's as simple as that, as we just suggest to ourselves, I'm not going to fall asleep or go so deep that I don't remember. I'm going to remember everything that she says and that I remember in this hypnosis session. So sometimes it's just as simple as setting the intention to stay more awake and aware. Yeah. And again, you get to decide. There's nothing wrong with sort of slipping away so deeply that you don't remember anything I say until I say, now I'm going to count from 1 to 5. And by the time I'm 5, you're awake and aware. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that is actually really calming and relaxing, to be able to drop that deep. So that's not inherently problematic. Tina, I love that. New portals into ourselves. That's beautiful, and agree, especially on this new moon, new portal. It's a great time to strengthen that new portal into ourselves, that capacity we all have to go in and down. Emily, that's such a beautiful thing to say. This is what I needed without realizing I needed it. So I'm super glad that your wise mind somehow drew you to this course and this experience. I really trust that each of us got what we needed from it. Yeah, thanks everyone. Well, thank you. I can have this energy because all of you are here, right? The week that I did the recording, it was fine, but it's not the same as when I have all of you here with me. Yay, Lindsay, I'm so glad that this course, and by the way, right now, I think there's 1,100 people signed up for this course, and it's going to be free indefinitely. So we don't have any more of those cool boxes and bracelets to send out. But the course is always free. And so please just pass it on to people that might benefit from it. Yeah, and Nancy, I will second that. The journey just gets better and better. And I completely agree with you that going into the shadow, doing, it's sort of like, I think that we all have this capacity to channel a lot of light, but sometimes it's just like a very narrow channel because there's been a lot of stuff that's happened, a lot of stress, a lot of trauma, a lot of overwhelm, a lot of chaos. This is life school. No one gets out without all that stuff. And so little by little, we start like expanding this little channel of light, and it gets wider and wider and wider and wider until we're really able to source a lot more light and love through our systems. And then we start to learn what that feels like. And we start to make choices about being in situations that allow us to stay in that space of light and love. But it does get better and better. It doesn't mean that the inner work isn't challenging or hard or brutal at times. Like I came back from that 5-day experience in Spain, and someone said, how was it? I'm like, well, it kind of kicked my butt, but I guess that's what I needed. And so there's also some joy that comes from like, it felt like a very deep clearing out for me. It felt like there was another layer that I saw. There was a humbling that happened. There was another layer I saw in myself that I hadn't been able to see before, that finally I saw, like, oh, wow. Okay, I get it now. So I agree. It does get better and better, and you get your sea legs on. Like it's not so overwhelming. And for me, there's a deep acceptance that there's no ceiling to this growth and evolution. Like I don't believe we ever arrive, right? It's just a continual expansion and growing. There's no, I don't even know if I believe in enlightenment, right? Like I do think there are enlightened masters, but I think that there's no ceiling. We just keep this capacity to keep growing and evolving, and it does get better, but it doesn't come without challenges, right? So thank you for that. Uh, 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 uh. Yeah, so dissociation is so common. We all dissociate, but it's definitely a continuum. And if we have a history of trauma in our life, it's much more likely that we dissociate quicker and more often. And so for people who tend to be more of a dissociator, and dissociation is, again, is like you just aren't really in your body. If you dissociate again on that continuum quite deeply, you might even lose space and time. You're like, you don't know what just happened to the last period of time. So I think when we are a dissociator, we have a tendency to not be able to stay in our body. The work that we need to be doing is embodiment work. We need to learn to be in our bodies. We need to learn to stay grounded. So it's more somatic based body work. I think sometimes the mental work, emotion can kind of take us up and out. So rubbing the feet, being in the feet and the pelvis, um, somatic grounding, stability based work, I think can be really helpful for dissociation. Nervous system regulation work as well, breath work, yoga based work, all of that I think can be really helpful for dissociation. Sherry, I'm glad you've done a lot of courses with me too. So I'm really glad that you liked the hypnosis piece as well. Yeah, I'll keep adding more hypnosis in. I love it so much. Thanks, Elizabeth. I know the Q&As are like another class, but I kind of like it because I like keeps me on my toes. And it's always curious for me what comes through because I do feel like I just try to stay open. And so sometimes the information that comes through doesn't feel like me. It just feels like I'm just channeling, just bringing it through. Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Love to you. Thank you, Maureen, for sharing this too. She said doing shadow work is what helped me break open in a good way. I didn't realize what I was pushing down, and I felt such a sense of freedom and growth. That is so important. So, so important that the shadow work, another reason we do shadow work, I'm having chills right now. So, Maureen, thank you for bringing this point up, is that it takes us so much freaking energy to hold our shadow down. Right? It takes so much energy to push down the stuff that we don't want to look at or deal with. It's so much work. And so if you feel that you are just exhausted all the time, you don't know why, oftentimes shadow work is when we allow whatever we're repressing down to be released, to be seen, to be integrated, to be loved, to be embraced, to have it say. And that's the thing, is when we bring the shadows up, they don't take over our lives. In fact, they go into the place they need to go, right? So sometimes we're like, I don't want to open Pandora's box. What's going to come out? It frees up energy for us to be able to see and integrate what we've been subconsciously pushing down for so long. So total agreement with you that when we do the integration work of allowing what we've been pushing down to come up, to see it, to hold it, to be with it, to feel it, we get freedom. We get energy back, right? We get energy back. And agreed, Maureen, it is kind of pure magic. Barbara, I love that. It gets harder, but more exciting. I feel that, Barbara. Yay. I'm glad people are lighting up and that the ripples are going out. And really, truly, it feels super humbled by all of it, because I feel like yeah, I put in the time and energy and the training and all of that, but these really are an offering of something bigger than me. I just have learned over the years and I'm continuing to hone just how to be more of a channel and to allow, larger wisdom to come through. So I don't really own any of it. It's not me, it's just coming through me. So I just want to humbly point that out as well. So I'm just as human as everyone else, believe me. All right. Thanks, everyone. Deep appreciation to all of you. Thanks for staying on with me so long. I'll miss all of you, but would love to see some of you in the Reclaim class with me. It's going to be a powerful 9 weeks, and I know it's going to help me go through the darkest time of the year, and it might just help you as well to have sort of that consistency and community. And we do dream work and it's good stuff. So I would love to see any of you that are feeling guided to that. Let me know. Okay. Did I miss anything, Sean? Okay. Thank you to Sean for helping me out. All right. Much love, everyone. Thanks, Janet. Love to you.